Grayson Grundhoefer joining us now. And Grayson, welcome back to the show. We'll be trying to be quick with you because it's been a fast and furious. I mean, there's never any time off in the portal. When does this thing end? Finally, Friday, the portal.
Yeah, it ends on the 16th, but that's not the end of this thing. I mean, that's just the last date where guys can enter the portal. Baylor can take guys for, I mean, they got, up until really, I'd say sometime in the summer for fall camp, obviously, but the majority of Baylor's class should be solidified by the 26th because that's the last day that you'd be able to take a prospect, and then they can enroll for the spring semester and be there for spring football.
Well, you're doing a great job for SicEm365, and the people who subscribe over there are definitely getting their money's worth. And y'all have had hundreds of thousands of views, I know. And so all your notes and everybody, and then also got to keep up Grayson with the former Baylor players that end up at other places. And, and we'll talk about Carl Williams a little bit, but let's keep our focus on the players that are headed toward Baylor. I saw one report out there, Grayson, I want to get your take on this, that DJ Lagway, all signs were still pointing toward him signing with Baylor. I think Baylor fans right now have this sort of impending dread because of what happened last football season and because some of the things that Baylor fans have been through. And when that report came out about Lagway, I think you and Pete Thamel had that of him visiting Ole Miss. It really was upsetting to a lot of Baylor fans. After now that he has taken that visit, what are you hearing on DJ Lagway? And I mean, I guess the priority has to be, let's go ahead and get him signed, because the more you wait, the more it allows other weird things to happen out there in college football.
So it's definitely a wild story for sure. I think the big thing that, myself and Colt Barber were posting on SicEm365, and the biggest part of this, I think, story is that he did commit when he was on his trip to Baylor. He did. He committed. It's a verbal commitment. I understand that when you hear reports he's going to Ole Miss for a visit, that makes you say, well, then he's not committed. But that happens all the time. I mean, you look at high school guys, you look at even transfer portal guys, they commit and then they still take visits elsewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world. He had already committed to taking that Ole Miss visit, and so he went ahead and honored that he was going to take that trip. And in fairness, Ole Miss hadn't figured out their quarterback situation quite yet. I mean, they're trying to get their ideal situation is that they get Trinidad Chambliss eligible and that he's their starting quarterback next year. That's Ole Miss's ideal situation. They got the Auburn transfer quarterback to commit as well. He was on the visit over the past couple days with DJ as well. So they're set at quarterback now. And honestly, I think DJ just honored that he was going to go take that visit. And that was pretty much that, because Ole Miss had their strategy at the quarterback position pretty much figured out. They were just bringing him in on another visit just to kind of make sure that they were solidifying that spot. Now on the Baylor side of things, I mean, he committed, so you're kind of just operating like he's committed. Now you're just waiting on him to sign. And that's been the thing that I know Baylor fans have been waiting on. We've been waiting on, just for those documents to actually come in for him to sign. But I fully expect that he will. I mean, I didn't really see a huge issue with him taking this trip to Ole Miss. I know it comes as a surprise, and it is a story. It definitely is a storyline, but I remain pretty adamant, and everyone that I talked to sources-wise seemed pretty confident that he was going to end up being a Bear, and I posted that as many times as I could on SicEm365, but of course, when RG3 posted last night, I think people really became a little bit more excited about it, or felt like it was even more solidified there. So just waiting on the paperwork to come through. I think at this point, I fully expect him to be a Bear, though.
All right. In my book, I don't have to have RG3 put his stamp of approval on your reports, okay? But I just think Baylor's had so much bad news that that's what happens. It's not so much about, these things happen or portal or whatever. It was on the heels of such exciting news, always going to have this visit. And as you would attest, a portal visit does feel different than these high school visits where they still go on. And sadly, as Baylor found out, even in the high school, they lost some of those players that went ahead and took visits. And so I just think that is what all those people that you're seeing on your, when you're in those chat rooms and everything, that's what they're feeling, is like, this is going to go wrong. So I think everybody would love to see that actual, like you say, the paperwork come in, including those Baylor coaches. Now, today, even you've had you had Draylon Miller from Colorado. You've been talking about him for a couple of weeks now. And then the Georgia State linebacker, Kendrick Walker. Again, these are the players that come in that you just never know for sure. But you like to get from these lower level conferences extremely. You want people that are have been very, very productive. What about Draylon to start with? Why do you think this was a big get? Because I sense from reading between the lines and hearing what you've told us that this is a pretty big get for the Bears, and this was a priority right away for them.
Right. So they added 2 receivers today because obviously Kentucky transfer Hardly Gilmore as well as the other one that they got on board. But man, Draylon, this is one where I had the fortune of just kind of being able to talk to sources really early on in the portal process about him. And Baylor was literally the name that I heard immediately when he entered the portal. I mean, just like they prioritized him to that level. They had one of the better offers for him initially and just kept putting the pressure on, honestly. It took him a little while to take his visits, which is why I think it didn't really string out his recruitment, but maybe it took a little longer. He got sick early last week, and so it took him time before he was able to take all his trips. He went to Louisville, Kentucky, Texas A&M, and then, of course, Baylor yesterday, and that was his visit cycle. So some pretty good teams kind of in the mix there. But in general, again, I think Baylor was the favorite from day one. That had been all over SicEm365. That had been one where it just felt like that was what it was coming to. And he's the guy that Baylor really wanted. And if you look at his fit in Baylor's offense, I think he's going to be phenomenal. I mean, you look at what Cole Wilson, Kobe Prentice, Monterey Baldwin all did in this offense. I think he's got a lot of kind of each of those guys. Plus, he is just a difference maker with the football in his hands. I mean, his yards after catch are phenomenal. His ability as a running back as well, in which you could be in 5 wide receiver sets and then flex him into the backfield and feel like you're getting a really good option running the football as well, is very intriguing. I also think there's just upside here. I mean, this guy was a top 100 prospect. I mean, there's a chance that he just starts dominating. I mean, I can really see that. He wins a lot of one-on-one routes, and you see that in Spavital's offense a lot with those slot guys. They give them one-on-one opportunities, and that's where he's really going to thrive. So I'm extremely excited. He's a guy you just get the ball in his hands and allow him to go to work, but I think there's upside with him down the field and in one-on-one situations. Huge get for the Bears, definitely.
All right, the Grayson worry-o-meter was kind of high at defensive line. They started addressing that, and I believe they have, 5 defensive linemen committed now?
Yeah, getting up there. I mean, depending on what you classify as the edge position. But yeah, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so 2 edges. I mean, Garrick Ponder is kind of in between there, the Southern Miss guy. But yeah, 5 of them right now. There's still work to do, is what I would say on that position. I think they still need to add some pieces. I really like Ryan Davis and Garrick Ponder, who are the edge types. I think they could add another edge. We talked about this one last week, Matt, but Coastal Carolina edge Zeke Campbell is one I'm definitely keeping an eye on there. He makes too much sense for them, especially with his connection with Ja'Cory Greer, but he has blown up on the recruiting trail, has a good offer list. And then I think they're going to address the interior of that defensive line a little more as well. I think they need to just find some guys. And we saw some Oregon dudes enter the transfer portal. We're going to see some more college football playoff type guys enter. I'm curious if Baylor tries to target some guys like that to try to address more of the defensive line group. Now that they've raised the floor of that group with the pieces that they have, I do think there's room to add to the ceiling of that group.
Okay, and you had said Baylor's going to need to bring in whatever it was, 30 to 35 players, and they really are buzzing now. Seemed like a little bit of a slow start for the Bears, but even that quarterback, the commitment with DJ got a lot of people fired up, and the hope is that DJ gets so solidified and that he is enough that he'll start reaching out to players, and that'll even help solidify some things there. This South Carolina defensive lineman, Xavion Hardy, you reported yesterday, 6'5", 200. He signed with Baylor, 6'5", 290-pounder, the number one JUCO recruit in the country in 2025. What did you find out about him from like this past season? And what is the hope there with him? Because obviously he was very productive in the JUCO ranks.
Right. He didn't play a lot this year. Now, in fairness, he was playing in the SEC. And so, like, there are a lot of really good players that were in front of him. He didn't get much of an opportunity. He enters the portal, and now it's one of those situations where it's like you look at a guy like this and you see the upside that he brings. I mean, again, you're the number one JUCO prospect in the country. You're pretty good. And so I think it's just finding that untapped potential. That's where it is with him. I don't view him as a sure thing. I view him as a high ceiling guy that you bring in. He's got a ton of talent. And if he works out, man, you got a really, really good defense lineman, an SEC caliber defensive lineman. And this is something that I think Baylor fans in general, and, myself having, somewhat of frustration with this as well, is, they need to take guys like this. And they've taken a lot more power four type guys who maybe didn't work out wherever they were at, but they're taking shots on them. And I do think that's a smart recipe for success. You have to develop the talent and you have to evaluate the talent correctly. But I do think taking shots like this is very appropriate, and mixing that in with the guys that they already have on the defensive line, which you got from Texas State, Southern Miss, Marshall. Like, you're looking at guys that bring your floor to another level, but getting a guy like this definitely helps you kind of take a ceiling shot. And I think that's smart for Baylor.
Okay, and Kansas State safety Kobe McAllister signed with Baylor. He was out due to injury. How much are you seeing? You mentioned the edge rusher that came out of K-State. There's another safety. How much are you seeing the Clanderman effect? And I think we probably were a little bit early on. We thought, well, he'll just bring everybody. And hey, everybody out there spending a lot of money on these players, right? So it was probably unfair to think he was just going to bring his whole defense with him. But walk us through a little bit these players that are coming from K-State, and in particular, what the traits are about them that you feel like Clanderman has convinced them to come to Waco, and how much you think they're going to help immediately.
Right. So, I mean, his defensive guys have gotten recruited very heavily. Two of them are going to Indiana. Austin Romaine's going to Texas Tech. Malcolm Alcorn is going to SMU, but he had offers from everybody. He's definitely a highly sought after guy. And so, Baylor had to pick and choose, right? You got to pick and choose the kind of guys that you want. And you mentioned Ryan Davis, the edge prospect that they got. He was a huge one for them. They have to address that position. He's got great familiarity with this scheme. He also brings upside to this roster as well. He was a guy who Kansas State was super high on this offseason. He came into the year, he just kept getting injured. His best football, I do think, is in front of him. He is a guy who can get after the quarterback, but he's also pretty good at stopping the run. He's not just going to get eaten up in that regard, and I think that's very important. But then also you have the development piece of that and him getting better and potentially playing his best football going forward. That's what you're hoping for with him. Now, the other two guys that you mentioned, Kobe McAllister is one, and then Daniel Cobbs is the other, the two safeties. Very important that Baylor got safeties in this portal class, with all that they've lost and kind of the problems that they have had there. Colby is a really good coverage guy. And if you watch Baylor a year ago, they couldn't cover very well. I know the run defense was the biggest problem, but they couldn't cover either. And McAllister definitely brings that to the table. I think he can cover out of the slot, which would mean he could play some nickel, which used to be the star. I don't know what Clanderman's going to call it, but essentially nickelback spot. He could do that. He could play free safety as well. And then Daniel Cobbs, I think, gives them depth options. at safety. I don't think he's going to start over Jacob Redding or Devin Turner, but I do think he will play a lot. Kind of in similar things with Colby. I think Colby will start for them, though. I do really like his game, and I like how he fits as well. Also, both those guys are playing safety, which is Joe Klanderman's position. And so for that reason, I do think you have to trust him a little bit on his evaluations and evaluating what he needs to bring into Baylor, especially at that safety position, which, again, is the one he'll be coaching.
Yeah, I'm hoping Baylor is one of the bigger boom or bust teams. We've had those discussions in the past, like this could be because the best news about that is if there's a boom to this bust, there's actually some upside for a decent team. You hate to go into a season with all bust, having no hope. And I don't know, it was sort of in those early days of the portal, not knowing what they're going to do at quarterback. It just was kind of feeling rough, and this thing has given Baylor some hope, especially with what I'm going to bring up here in a minute. The men's basketball team off to an extremely tough start in conference. Last thing I wanted to ask you on the O-line, it's interesting, and I have no problem when they go after these guys from like the MAC, this enormous player from Toledo, in fact, 6'7", 301-pound prospect. I was watching Oregon and Indiana and some of these teams with just these massive dudes out there at like left tackle and right tackle. We had one guy from the MAC that had to medically retire a couple of years ago when they brought him in. And I think that was that offensive line coach that ended up going to, I believe, Alabama from Baylor, the old Michigan State offensive line coach. As they piece these things together, how do you see this O-line coming together, both the couple of holdovers and now the guys that they're bringing in?
I would say that there's still work to do, but I can understand the approach that Baylor's going with here. They've brought in a lot of interesting guys who have played a lot of football. I think that's the key. Really, the only guy that they brought in that hasn't played a lot is Nate Kibble, who transferred in from Texas. But he brings kind of that ceiling, right? And so, again, you're bringing guys who help solidify your floor, and then you're going out and taking shots on guys who you think could be really, really good, but maybe haven't played a lot. And so Kibble definitely fits that. But the other guys that they got have played a lot of football just at a lower level. And so you're kind of trying to address it in that way. They're waiting on a decision from Stanford offense lineman Jack Lehrer. He'd be a big one. He's played a lot of football, 18 career starts, has played some guard and a lot of tackle in his career. And so he would be another one that you just add to the mix, and you add to the competition, you add to the talent, and then you build from there and you let these guys go out there and compete. I still think I think they're probably going to add at least maybe one more, maybe two more. From a standpoint of these guys could actually play, they're going to have to take more bodies just because they don't have enough bodies. But I think from a actual, like, we want this guy to potentially start, I think there's probably room for two more of those type of additions. And then just let them go out there and compete. You only have Colton Siraki and Caden Siraki back from a potential, starting standpoint. And then you like your young guys, whether it's Matthew Parker, Harrison Clough, to come in there and battle as well. But you want as many buys as possible. Baylor needs just a ton of competition up front. It's been something that they were needing this year. They should have gone out and brought in another guy from the transfer portal for this past season. Mm-hmm. They didn't. And because of that, I think it really hurt their competition in the off season. And they just kind of felt like, oh yeah, just run it back right after the great end of the year. It didn't quite work out this year. I think they're definitely going to shift that approach.
Okay, and like when Oregon, like a great program like that, takes a kid like Carl Williams, who was part of that freshman class a couple of years ago, that Baylor thought after 2023 season, boy, if you keep Caden, if you keep Carl, Corey, some of those others, and none of them really panned out. Is when Oregon takes it, and again, they may be just taking a flyer on him, and maybe he's not getting that much money. Is that based on just, hey, this guy was really good, as they got great freshman tape on him, and maybe we can get something out of him? I still don't quite know why they couldn't ever get Carl on the field this season. You may have some intel on that. Maybe it was an injury, but it just seemed odd they could never get the guy going. Would a team like Oregon that's well established and that was a semifinal team takes a shot at a kid like that? What is that about?
I think it's just, again, one of those upside shots. I mean, if you
Yeah.
see Carl at his best, I mean, he's a good player. I mean, Baylor felt so highly of him. He was at media days 2 years ago. I mean, that is just kind of where things are at. And so now he gets an opportunity to go to Oregon and just compete and just see if he can make it happen. And so it was intriguing to see that. I was a little surprised by it, but I think it's a good move by Oregon. I mean, when Carl's healthy, Carl's good. Just he has not been healthy at all since his freshman year.
Okay, and Bryson goes to Auburn, so that'll be interesting to see him right away. You don't think Baylor needs a running back in this portal? Will they look at that?
I really don't think so. That's been a position that I've been looking at a little bit, but they returned everyone except for Bryson. And I would also say, Draylon Miller got a lot of carries at Colorado. So if you have worries about your depth, or if you just lose everybody at running back again, then I think he could fill in a pinch.
Okay. All right. And then I did want to bring up Baylor basketball. You've been so busy, but I know you love hoops enough to at least take a peek over there at what Baylor's doing. Grayson, we hadn't seen anything quite this bad. Like that I think we knew Scott would find a way, even when they lost to K-State a few years ago and they started 0-3. That team had enough talent. There's some things to suggest indicators that this team's not going to turn it around, and they could easily end up 0-6 here. I guess the easy question is like, what happened? And it's just everything that can go wrong is going wrong. And as Kendall Couch said the other day, and I talk hoops with him a lot, they did not even belong on the same court as Houston the other day. And it's crazy to have gotten to the point in just a couple of years where you're not really competitive against these top teams, where Kansas and Baylor only 3 or 4 years ago were really the class of this conference. And now they're just not even within any close to BYU, Arizona, Texas Tech, Houston, a lot of these teams. I don't know, Grayson, I hate it. And I know Baylor's going to do everything in its power to turn this thing around, but I don't see any easy answers for this season.
I really don't either, but the crazy part is this was kind of my expectation. And so it's not really shocking to me that this is where they're at. This felt like kind of a bridge year a little bit. I mean, once they lost Rob Wright and you looked at their point guard situation, they don't have a true point guard. And in college basketball, you need a true point guard. They tried to solidify their big position by going and getting James Najee. And, that's fine, but you have to hit on the guys that you're spending on. And I believe you have to have a point guard. And Baylor spent as much as they could on this roster while losing Rob Wright. And they just haven't gotten a lot in return. I mean, Obi Agbum's been okay, but not to the level that they need him to be. Michael Ratai hasn't been anywhere close to where they need him to be so far this year. Skillings and Cam Carr. I mean, Skillings has been okay. Cam Carr's been really good. He's been the bright spot. But even he goes through these ups and downs and these lulls when you really need him to be just this stabilizing presence. Then Tunde is a freshman. He's got great highs and a lot of lows as well. And so I saw this team and we saw them play early in the year. I still had a lot of questions, even though they started strong. And then you looked at conference play and it's like 2 of their first 3 games are against 2 of the top 5 teams in the country. Probably weren't going to win those. They should have beaten TCU. That's a bad loss. But for them to be 0-3 right now really isn't all that surprising. Now, they do have to turn around, and I think to some extent they will. I don't necessarily know if that means they're going to do the full turnaround where they become a contender in the Big 12, because I never expected that. Yeah. I expected this team to kind of be one of those. I think I had them as like a 7-10 seed, which basically puts you at, 10-10 or 9-11 in the Big 12? And that is still definitely doable in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't know. To your point, Ratai looks bad. Last year they missed on the Duke guard. That turned out horribly. I think in addition to, I've been told, I'm going to have Doug McNamee on soon. I've been told he's going to, work hard to get Scott more money. But I also think they got to take a really long look at evaluation, because I mean, I like Skillings was good against Baylor in the past. I'm not saying I was like against that. I was happy to see Dan Skillings come, but there's like almost no one other than Carr and Tunde's even having trouble finishing some of these. There's nobody to go get their own shot. There's nobody to run the team. They're horrible at defensive rebounding. The one thing they do is they can offensive rebound, but they got crushed by Houston. I don't know. It's a combination of the conference being really, really good, but I hate that they've bottomed out. Like, they were not good last year. Let's not really act like they were. I think they sort of got into the tournament based on reputation, and that was good. I mean, I'm glad they got in there and won a game, but this may be the wake-up call, Grayson, that they need, right? To truly bottom out. And I don't think anymore in the portal it can even be that big of an excuse. We have 13 new people because a ton of these teams are starting over. Now, not Iowa State, but, Arizona's bringing in a ton of new players. TCU every year brings in a ton of new players. They have Posey back and they have Punch back, who are nice players, but Posey's off the bench. So I don't know if that can be, Grayson, in my mind, like some kind of huge excuse. Like we don't have any returning players.
I would agree with you if Rob Wright had returned, because I do feel like that move so late in the process just completely set back their roster construction as a whole. Like, they had to frantically try to figure out that position, and they didn't really do it. And unfortunately, that's the unfortunate part. I mean, you look at some of the guys that, maybe they could have had. I mean, maybe they should have taken another chance. I think you're exactly right. I mean, NIL, I don't think has been the issue here. I mean, Jeremy Roach got paid last year and just wasn't very good. It was just a misevaluation. And this roster, I don't think, is anywhere near as, heavily NIL focused as last year's team. But this year's team, there are still some misses here. I mean, some guys that you really went out and wanted and prioritized, like Ratai, like Obi Agbum, that just haven't fit what they need. And honestly, I think more of it's about fit than is necessarily just the player not playing well. This team hasn't really made a lot of sense to me since the offseason, and it's just become even more apparent that this team just is not a great team. They got some good parts, but just not a great team together.
Maybe Scott will pull off a miracle. Grayson, I know you're probably wondering my interpretation of a quick interview when I keep you for like 27 minutes, but I am going to start calling. As of today, I thought of this because I saw you say boom the other day when Baylor got one of those big. I am going to these next few portal people, even when DJ finally signs, DJ Lagway, we're going to start calling these Grayson bombs, okay? And that'll be something official we do on the Mosley Show. We may even have a little graphic for it with like your face attached to it, okay?
Let's do it.
For taking a break and being on with us, we'll Grayson bomb. In lieu of all the money I'd like to pay you, we will have Grayson bombs. Hey, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. I hope you're not, putting on too much weight with missing out on all these. How's your practice go the other night for your elementary school age basketball? Okay.
Good. We got another one tonight and 2 games this week, but we're undefeated right now. So we're doing good. We're cruising.
Did you do well in the portal going into this season?
We got some good 7th graders. We got a couple 8th graders that stuck around. Those were my portal additions, and we're doing good. We got a good team.
Oh, this is middle school. That's right. This is higher than I even had you. I was trying to think of your actual kids, but we're talking. Yeah, these are major deals. All right, Grayson, I appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Appreciate you.
All right, there he goes, Grayson Grundhoefer, joining the Mosley Show. And, he'll have to look real quick, and we'll have another Grayson bomb before long.